Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine one of Europe's smallest microstates, right? A place you might picture nestled in mountains, dotted with ancient towers, cobblestone streets. Now imagine that same place holding this monumental secret, not hidden in dusty archives or anything, but deeply embedded in its very DNA. Today, we're doing a deep dive into San Marino, this ancient republic, to uncover how it's not just a historical marvel, but actually a living genetic archive. Our mission is to explore why scientists are calling it a hidden genetic stronghold and, what that means for understanding ancient populations and, just as importantly, for navigating some pretty complex ethical questions in modern genetics.
Yeah, what is fascinating here is just the sheer scale of this genetic insulation. I
Yeah.
mean, researchers have found that since its founding way back in 301 AD, San Marino has been remarkably uh, genetically isolated for over 1,700 years.
1,700 years. Wow.
Exactly. Think about how much Europe has changed in that time, how many migrations, mixing events.
Right, constant movement.
Precisely. And that kind of, well, unbroken isolation has allowed them to trace DNA markers back to pre-Roman times with an almost unbelievable level of continuity. It's like finding a perfectly preserved genetic fossil record, really.
So when we talk about that deep past, what exactly are scientists seeing in San Marino's DNA? Is it really a direct link to ancient peoples?
It really seems to be. For example, there was a 2020 mitochondrial DNA study that traces the maternal line, and it highlighted that nearly 74% of the maternal haplogroups in San Marino fall into these really specific HU5 and J lineages.
Okay.
Think of these haplogroups as extremely old, unique genetic signatures. They get passed down almost unchanged for thousands of years. And while you do find these in, say, Neolithic and Bronze Age central Italy, you just don't see them at this kind of concentration in modern Italy or most of Europe today.
So finding them packed together like that in San Marino is unusual.
Highly unusual. It's like discovering an entire library of ancient genetic scrolls, perfectly preserved. Well, elsewhere, those same scrolls have been scattered and mixed almost beyond recognition. And it's similar for the male population, too. They show high concentrations of a specific Y-DNA haplogroup, R1BU152.
R1BU152.
Yeah, and that's a genetic fingerprint linked directly to Italic-speaking populations that actually predated Roman expansion. So it really is a unique, unbroken genetic thread stretching way back.
That's incredible. So how did this tiny nation manage to keep such a distinct genetic fingerprint for nearly 2 millennia when, like you said, the rest of Europe became this huge melting pot? It wasn't just luck, was it? Or the mountains?
Well, the mountains definitely help. The terrain, naturally limits access to some extent. But no, it wasn't just geography. Historians really emphasize that San Marino's very specific civic protections were absolutely key.
Civic protections.
Meaning, unlike so many other places, San Marino has kept its independence for over 1,700 years, and crucially, with extremely limited immigration throughout its history. Even today, scientists found this naturalization process is one of the world's most selective. Citizenship is very rarely granted to outsiders.
Ah, okay. So it's a deliberate policy almost.
Exactly. This combination, the geographic isolation and these really strict civic laws, has just profoundly reduced genetic mixing and maintained this high degree of, well, genetic homogeneity.
And this leads us to a really thought-provoking point you mentioned earlier. Some people argue this exclusivity, this intense focus on preserving a distinct lineage, kind of borders on what they call biological nationalism. Can you unpack that a bit? What does that mean here, and how might people see it?
Yeah, that's a crucial and sensitive consideration. Biological nationalism in this context basically refers to the idea that a nation's identity is fundamentally tied to a specific, unique genetic makeup. Now, for San Marino, their ancient lineage is absolutely a point of immense pride. It's woven right into their sense of historical continuity.
Right, part of their story.
Exactly. But some outside observers do raise the question, does this commitment to preserving a distinct heritage inadvertently, perhaps, lean into an emphasis on perceived purity that could potentially lead to exclusionary practices?
No.
It's not about making a judgment, it's just observing a potential tension there. The San Marinese people themselves, from what we understand, largely view this as protecting a unique cultural and historical legacy. Almost like they're guardians of an ancient story that's encoded in their very cells. There's a very deeply held cultural identity tied to their genetic heritage.
That's a really powerful way to think about it, and it's sensitive, definitely. But moving beyond the historical and cultural side, there's also this fascinating aspect related to health, right? San Marino actually boasts one of the highest life expectancies in Europe, something like 85 years on average.
That's right, around 85.1 years.
So that's made researchers ask, is it just, the clean air and good health care, or could there be something deeper, something actually in that unique genetic makeup?
Researchers have certainly been looking into that. There was a 2022 European genomic aging study, and it identified that about 17% of San Marino's elderly population carry specific variants of the FOXO3A gene.
FOXO3A, the longevity gene, I've heard of that.
That's the one. It's often called that because it helps cells repair themselves, resist damage. You could sort of imagine it as a super efficient maintenance crew for your body's cells. And it seems San Marino residents tend to have a particularly active version of this crew, so to speak.
Interesting.
And there's also some preliminary data suggesting a rare local variant of another gene, the LPA gene, that might significantly reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. Almost like a natural genetic shield against heart issues. This unique profile has even led some longevity scientists to label San Marino a kind of blue zone fragment, even though it's not officially on the list.
So, okay, on one hand, it's this incredible scientific treasure trove. We can learn about longevity, about ancient populations. But I imagine such a unique and homogeneous gene pool doesn't come without its own set of vulnerabilities or risks, does it?
You've hit on a key challenge there.
Absolutely. While it's a goldmine for medical research, it allows for really precise genetic mapping of disease resistance, inheritance patterns, things like that. Researchers also warn that San Marino's genetic homogeneity increases susceptibility to certain rare hereditary disorders.
Like what, for example?
Things like a higher carrier rate for conditions like familial Mediterranean fever or congenital lactose intolerance. These tend to become more concentrated in populations with less genetic diversity.
Right.
So this presents a really complex ethical dilemma, doesn't it? Should such a population be preserved untouched, almost like a living museum? Or should it be intensely studied, perhaps even encouraged to diversify a bit to mitigate these genetic risks? And some even voice concern about potential exploitation, using San Marino's unique genome to market longevity supplements or make kind of genetic elite claims without proper ethical consent and making sure the community benefits. And it goes even deeper, doesn't it? It touches on cultural identity itself. It sounds like San Marino's genetics are just tightly woven into how the San Marinese people see themselves, like you said, viewing themselves as guardians of not just a republic, but this very distinct lineage. You mentioned a saying.
Yes, apparently there's a saying among some older locals that really captures it. We are few, but we are the roots.
Wow. We are few, but we are the roots. That's powerful.
It's incredibly powerful, isn't it? And it makes you reflect on whether genes should define identity or perhaps just inform it.
Yeah.
For this community, clearly, this invisible layer of genetic history is incredibly significant. It reinforces their deep connection to their past and their land.
So what does this all mean then? San Marino's unique gene pool, it really presents us with this fascinating duality. On one side, it's a scientific treasure trove for understanding ancient populations' longevity. But on the other, it's also a lightning rod for these incredibly complex ethical questions. We've touched on the core dilemmas that balance between preserving heritage versus maybe edging towards biological nationalism, and the inherent risks versus the undeniable research benefits of such a homogeneous gene pool.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's clear that San Marino's gene pool isn't better than any other, not in some hierarchical sense, of course not, but it is distinctly and remarkably preserved. And that makes it a powerful case study for humanity as a whole, I think. This raises an important question, really, for you listening to consider. Should San Marino be seen mainly as a genetic time capsule to admire and study? Or perhaps as a fragile population that needs protection from the potential risks of that isolation?
That's a tough one.
It is. And more broadly, should nations like this fully open up their genomes for scientific study, or should they defend them as a unique cultural heritage, almost like a private historical record? It really prompts us to think about identity, history, and our genetic future in a brand new light. Because when it comes to San Marino, maybe the real mystery isn't just its long history, but what's still hidden deep within its DNA.